At a time when California is struggling to contain wildfires and fight the COVID-19 pandemic, the state's governor is facing his own political crisis. A long list of opponents is vying to replace Governor Gavin Newsom in a recall election this month. San Diego-based reporter Bianca Bruno explains how this long-shot recall campaign made it on the ballot and how it could shape the political future of a rising star in the Democratic Party.
Where are all these cicadas coming from? I was like, what is that? I was like, there's something.
About every 17 years, cicadas emerge from the ground in a strange life cycle experts have yet to fully understand. Recall elections in California appear to be following the same pattern. In 2003, it took a special set of circumstances for Governor Gray Davis to be recalled and actor and bodybuilder Arnold Schwarzenegger to be elected governor. Just over 17 years later, like they did in 2003, swarms of cicadas emerged again this summer. And Californians will decide again whether the current governor of the most populated U.S. state should be removed from office. It's an election experts told me took just the right set of circumstances to emerge. This time around, California Governor Gavin Newsom must defend his seat as the state's leader before he's even completed his first term in office. Nick Cahill, the Sacramento politics reporter for Courthouse News, told me state Republicans have been after Newsom's seat ever since he was elected in 2018.
The motto for the recall proponents overall has really been try, and try again. They've failed 5 times to gather the necessary signatures to qualify the recall. Literally the day he was inaugurated, these recall petitions started. So 5 times they came up empty, but they finally came through on this 6th try. Once it became clear that they were going to meet that threshold, the state GOP latched onto it quickly, and it has now become their highest priority of unseating Governor Newsom.
But how were Newsom's opponents successful? For one, they were handed a court victory which extended the time they had to gather signatures to certify a recall election by 4 months. The constitutionality of that court decision is still being questioned.
They were lucky on 2 counts. The first count was they got more time. It's questionable whether that's even constitutional at a state level. The time period to gather signatures for initiatives is a state law, but the time period to gather signatures for a recall is built into the state constitution. So a Sacramento Superior Court judge gave them additional time. The second was right after or right around that time that they got that window of extra time, that's when Governor Newsom went to the French Laundry. That became a rallying point, I think, to help gather signatures during the recall period, because people were already getting upset with Newsom among conservatives, among those who didn't like him. But this made it kind of easier to sell and package to people to sign a signature like, yeah, he has one set of rules. He's forcing you to live by a second set of rules.
That's Wesley Hussey, a political science professor at Sacramento State. He's referring to the now infamous incident where Governor Newsom was photographed at a swanky dinner in Napa Valley, at a time when indoor dining was banned in California. Newsom's pandemic restrictions enforced in the Golden State have been one of the major selling points of his recall proponents.
They've sort of painted him as this coastal elite, issuing lockdown order after lockdown order and targeting businesses from his decadent mansion.
And Newsom didn't take those criticisms seriously at first, Cahill said.
First, Newsom and the party largely ignored the recall petition in the final days before, it was put on the ballot by elections officials. They were still sort of mum and just kind of saying, we're focused on the pandemic. We're focused on California's issues. But once it, indeed landed on that ballot, they went on the offensive. Meanwhile, he's gone up and down the state and has been hosted for press conferences by public officials and mayors and congressmen. And even nationally, some of the big guns have come in. from the Democratic Party, such as Elizabeth Warren is appearing in ads.
Here's the deal with the recall of Gavin Newsom. We've seen Trump Republicans across the country attacking election results and the right to vote. Now they're coming to grab power in California, abusing the recall process and costing taxpayers millions. Here's how we stop them.
Professor Hussey said Newsom had to redirect the narrative in campaign messaging late this summer, when initial polling showed the recall election could be closer than many would expect in a state where Democrats have a supermajority.
And so I think that one of the things the Newsom campaign did was kind of to show to Democrats, hey, if I lose, it's not a moderate, smart Republican, or it's not another Democrat that you might like, or hey, it might not even be a liberal Democrat that you're enthused about. It's going to be a really, really conservative Republican. And if you like Donald Trump, oh, you don't? Well, here's a version of him. Here's a black Rush Limbaugh who wants to become governor of California and has a real chance if you don't vote to keep me.
He's referring, of course, to conservative talk radio host Larry Elder, who is polling highest among the pool of dozens of candidates vying to replace Newsom. For Elder, the unique circumstances which led to the recall election likely created the only shot he has at being elected governor.
I think the recall is perfect for Larry Elder because it allows him to run in a very short window, and it allows him not to have to attack other candidates. He doesn't need to win votes against other candidates. He just needs to get votes himself. And because there's no Democrats in this replacement ballot, he can just appear to conservative Republicans and say, I'm your savior.
But recent polling by the Public Policy Institute of California shows it's not a close race. The poll found among likely California voters, only 39% would vote to replace Newsom. So what does Elder get out of a likely failed recall election campaign? Fame.
Now he's a nationwide figure. Before, he was kind of, more in the shadows and a marginal figure, well known among some people in California, but not everyone. And now conservatives across the country are going to love him. And, that's going to help the Larry Elder brand. It's going to help him probably get a bigger radio contract. Maybe he'll get a Fox News show or some other conservative outlet news show. And so he'll be a bigger name for what he's trying to do. It's pretty smart. But obviously, collectively in California, we care more about candidates trying to help the state rather than help themselves.
And while Elder stands to benefit from his recall campaign, Hussey said Newsom's political future beyond the Golden State's border may be permanently bruised.
It changes people's perceptions of him. No one wants to be in a recall. Winning a recall is great, but not having a recall is better. Gavin Newsom would love to be president at some point. He'd love to have a political career after being governor of California. And I think the recall hurts that. I think it doesn't hurt him at all to win re-election if he wants to do that. But I think, if he's up to run for the Senate seat when Dianne Feinstein retires, or if he decides to run for president someday, I think other Democrats will be more willing to challenge him and more willing to say, you had a tough time even winning a recall in a blue state like California's.
But will anything change to California's recall election rules? The Department of Finance estimated it will cost taxpayers $276 million.
The actual likelihood of substantial changes coming really isn't likely. Major tweaks, to California's recall system would involve amending the state constitution, and placing, something like that on the ballot requires a ton of heavy lifting. It's also important to keep in mind that 2022 is an election year, so the appetite and the resources and the fundraising to sort of get a constitutional amendment like that on the ballot are probably going to be slim to pull from.
While Cahill predicts election rules changes are unlikely during a regular election year, Professor Hussey pointed out there are potential changes that don't involve amending the state constitution.
Maybe we don't have to have a replacement ballot. We have a lieutenant governor, we elect a lieutenant governor independently of a governor. If there's a recall governor and succeeds, maybe we don't need to have a replacement ballot to choose a new governor. We have a ready-made governor in waiting. Maybe the amount of signatures necessary, the 16%, can be raised. It's still a lot of effort and a lot of money to gather those signatures. So people are like, oh, the recall happens all the time. No, it's happened twice in 20 years. And before that happened, never in California for a statewide official. So it's very rare to get that many signatures.
Just don't expect recalls to happen more frequently than when cicadas emerge nearly every 20 years.
For the most part, these are not going to be normal things. And even though the recall, I think, has been politicized and partisanized, it's just still a very high bar to gather that many signatures in that amount of time. When Davis was recalled in 2003 and Schwarzenegger became governor, there was a lot of punditry that says, oh, this is the era of recalls all the time in California, and it didn't happen. Occasionally, there's been a state legislature here or there where there's a lower threshold in a smaller area, but the uniqueness of this and the uniqueness of 2003 means, yeah, there'll probably be a recall for a statewide official, probably the governor, maybe in the next 20, 30, 40 years, but it will also be an interesting, unique case.
You can find recall election results and more coverage of all things Sacramento politics at courthousenews.com. You can also follow us on Twitter. We're at Courthouse News and at Sidebar CNS.